Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Well, this is a map that's going to be changing a lot for us through the middle part of March. What you're looking at here is the beginning of the year, all the way through March 5th, temperature ranks, average temperature ranks by climate district. And you notice that if you are east of the Mississippi River, it has been an extremely mild start to this new year. At one point, about a week and a half ago, the Great Lakes ice concentration was down at 6%. That would be record lowest. Again, that was about 10 days ago. It's come up a little bit to about 12%, but normally we see much more of the Great Lakes covered in ice. You then take a look at this and examine, some of the ranks. I mean, across the state of North Carolina, we're having, on average, a top 4 warmest start to any year on record. And the pattern has just continued to favor deep troughs that have come into the west, systems that have ejected and run toward the eastern Great Lakes. And for most of the last about 45 days or so, we've had some sort of a subtropical ridge that's been in place. Now, in the last couple of weeks, we've been hinting at the potential for a pattern change, and it was going to really be building on if we could get La Nina just to completely let itself go. And we've actually seen that happen. So what I'm concerned about is this. This is the U.S. National Phenology Network's Spring Leaf Index anomaly. And so using satellite data, using temperature records, and actually using some observations, this is looking at how early spring is compared to normal. And so for most North Carolina, it's 15 to 20 plus days earlier than normal. And you can see it extending all the way up to like Washington, D.C., all the way to southern Illinois, and all the way over here into parts of Texas. That's what that southeastern ridge has done. And this is what that southeastern ridge looks like. So what the flow has done is there's been a ridge here. It's then dove into the west and then ran up over the top of this. And so since the beginning of February, that's been a mainstay of this pattern. This is what the pattern has looked like for a while. What this has also done is it's given us this, helped with this precipitation pattern. Now we actually measure a water year from October to October. And the reason for that is because unlike everywhere east of the east of the Rockies, the western side of the United States has a very distinct wet and dry season. And their wet season typically begins in October. So that's why the water year starts in October. We could look over any time period. It doesn't matter. But the point is I'm looking for changes in what we saw from last summer and fall. So October is a good time to start. So from then all the way to March the 5th, we've been much wetter over to the Appalachian Mountains. Still the driest area has been in kind of the southeastern corner of the state. But as of late, we've seen better precipitation in most of that area, which has been important. Also, you notice that much of the Corn Belt has received decent precipitation after what was one of the driest finishes to a growing season on record. That's also important because we're trying to see soil moisture reviving in this particular area as it was so very low going through most of winter. It's starting to come up now because of some recent precipitation. I do want you to know that the drought that is anchored here in the plains, especially in western Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, eastern Colorado, this area here just remains exceptionally dry. And we've seen actually 6 different major dust storms go through this area since the start of the year. And you notice that Florida's dry. And one of the big reasons is Florida's been tucked underneath that large subtropical ridge we just talked about. Now to show you the comparison on drought, this goes back to the beginning of February when we still had better than 70% of the land area of the lower 48 in drought. And I'm going to show you the latest drought monitor. So where are the changes? Well, the big changes in California. All right, changes throughout the west. Almost no change. Look at the plains. Very little change in the plains. And then we've seen a reduction almost everywhere east of the Mississippi River except where it's built into Florida. That's what's going on right now with kind of our overall drought picture. But as I mentioned, this pattern that has just kept this big subtropical ridge in place is out. So is this one. And what's going on here is that the MJO is now firmly over into phase 7 and 8. Now, the only way to really get over there and stay over there at such high amplitude, that means as far away from the center as you can get. This means that big storms are rolling here in the western Pacific, is that you have to have gotten rid of the influence of strong easterly trade winds, which is what we call La Nina. And what this is going to do, in other words, I show you these graphics all the time, but ultimately, this is just another metric by which we can measure the position and strength of the jet stream, okay? What this is going to do is it's going to prefer the jet stream to get configured like this. Make a big run toward the equator, toward Hawaii, come up into weak ridging over the west, and then likely have some sort of a block, a big Greenland ridge over, I guess I should have drawn that area the other way, a big Greenland ridge like this, and some troughing here in the North Atlantic. So there's a couple of important signals for this. Should this last through much of March into April, it is a cooler signal for us finally, which means we're going to be talking about increased frost risk again. This could also mean more precipitation coming into our area. But that jet stream moving to the south is critical, because what we see is that the jet, which had spent so much time in what we call its retracted phase, where it was coming off of Japan about that far and splitting into a ridge that went around like this, okay? And then came into the west and then ran up over the big subtropical ridge here. That's basically what the flow has looked like for most of this winter after the start of the new year. Okay, it's now moving over into an extended phase and going to shift farther to the south, which means it's going to do this. And that change is going to have a major influence on our precipitation. I'm going to show it to you. As I play this out, this is a global view of jet stream level winds. Now, what do you notice? All the way by Friday, here's the extended Pacific jet. Goes to Hawaii and targets California. There is major flood risk in California. Now, just for a moment, let's think about the other side of this country, okay? Because to get this much flow coming into it after what has already been a truly epic snow season, where some places have 200 to 300% of snowpack right now, okay? Plus all the flooding rains we saw in January, all the flooding rains we saw in parts of February, to see this coming back again in March is going to continue to make the problem worse for the West. I know you've all seen the news reports and seen how deep the snow is in like this Sierra Nevada near like Tahoe. Well, just understand there are some places out there that have over 80 inches of liquid in the snow. I'm not talking about the depth of the snow. When you melt it all down, there's 80 inches in that. But notice what's gone. There is no big subtropical ridge over the southeast anymore. So what that means is our next 15 days, especially because of the next 5 to 6 days, we're going to be drier. In fact, there's not much precip this week coming at all because of high pressure until we get into Friday. But I want you to see where it's going to be wet. Better moisture coming into the plains. Continued flooding in the Mid-South. This is a problem. The Delta region, the lower Mississippi Valley wants to be planting. Texas, planting. The whole of the South, planting. Wet conditions are going to keep that from happening. You then see out west where we could have, compared to normal over the next 15 days, an extra 5.5 inches of precipitation, some places more than that. In fact, I saw in the 10-day European model that parts of coastal California and the Sierra Nevada could have a foot of rainfall in the next 10 days if the current model runs have this right. But we are going to be under some higher pressure, and that's going to be drier for most of this week, but week 2 is going to change that pattern up a bit. Now, I told you there was some colder air coming, but is that going to mean snow? Well, let's just go out there and look over the next 10 days at who's got a chance of getting at least 3 inches of snow. You notice that most of the snow is in the northern tier of the United States or it's in the west. We do not see, snow coming right now. We don't see a forecast for snow coming into North Carolina, even though the colder air is coming in. But remember, there's a ton of snow on the ground already in through here. Remember hearing about the blizzards coming out of South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin? We're going to add a whole bunch more to this in this week as well. So this is important. This is all moisture. It's going to get into the soil and help revive this particular region going into summer, all right? But I want to show you what those temperatures are going to do. Big picture first, and then we'll get back to the details at the end of this video. So it's mild through this week until we get toward the end of the week, and then it's cold coming through. And that cold's going to last through the middle of the month. And with this is going to come an increased risk of frost, and that cold could likely last out there past the 17th, 18th, and 19th before we start to see a pattern change. So you got another 4 to 5 days of absolutely beautiful weather this week. And then once we get into Friday, the pattern's going to shift and we're going to see more colder days than warmer, likely through the middle part of this month. That's what we're dealing with. Now, the longer range forecast, and I'll get an update of this tomorrow night, which means I'll put it in my reports you get later on this week for those of you that sign up for those. But this is the current March 10th through April 10th outlook from the European model. Now, it has you very wet for the rest of March, all the southeast. The model might back off on this a bit with the newest run, what will come out tomorrow night. But still, I do not see it being a dry 30-day stretch from mid-March to mid-April. The cold risk here, most of this is coming in the middle of March. I don't see it hanging on all the way through the middle of April. And we'll talk about the frost risk in each video that I put out here. I'll give you a 7-day frost outlook. But the big news that I want to share with you is how fast this La Nina is fading. We've already seen a lot of warm water surface here. The strong trade winds are gone in this area. And the newest model run from the ECMWF now has this potential for an El Nino event starting as soon as July. and maybe even moving in toward weak to moderate El Nino conditions by fall. Now, to show you what that looks like, this is the newest ECMWF run of ocean temperatures. And as I play this forward, we see that through September, the potential for a pretty substantial El Nino event. What this means is the trade winds which have been going strongly like this, well, sometimes they just kind of back off, or sometimes even reverse. What we do know is that it tends to increase wind shear in this area once we get into August, September, October, the heart of our hurricane season, which means it could impact the strength of any would-be tropical system. Now, we all know that it's always the position of the subtropical ridge over Bermuda. If it moves this way or this way, that changes everything about the trajectory of these systems. So we'll be watching for that carefully. But given this, I would like to take you to the United States and show you what this precipitation and temperature forecast is going to look like. So let's do a seasonal forecast. There we go. And I'm going to bring you back. So April, May, June. Strongest signals for wetter in the Mid-South, the Missouri Valley, lower and mid-Mississippi River Valley. We don't necessarily have strong signals yet. This is an artifact in the model. Okay. If we stretch this forward to another month, May, June, July, the models are keeping much of the Corn Belt, the Ohio, Tennessee Valley, through the Appalachian Mountains into New England and most of North Carolina, Virginia, on the wetter side. And you have to make it a hard argument to understand why that's going to be drier there. I think the real drier area will likely be here. All right. Let's go ahead another set of months. How about June, July, August? So at this point, the models have a strong wet signal here, but it's not as though it's a strong dry signal for us. I don't quite know why the model has picked up on this drier signal for this area. I don't see it building in a big subtropical ridge again. I don't see it pouring on the heat into this area. In fact, summer heat seems to want to be in Texas. So that's your newest forecast from the European Model Seasonal Outlook. And I want to complement that, or maybe contrast that with what the official forecasts from NOAA look like. So if we go out there April, May, and June and look at the temperatures, we expect to go back on a bit of a rebound. If we do the same thing for precipitation April, May, and June, we see better chances of wet through the Ohio Valley, and that clips us. If we then go out to summer and say, well, what about the June, July, August temperature pattern? Remember, the heat's in Texas or the Great Basin, according to the models. We're mild, but heat seems to be here at this point in the models. Now, it's March. This is all going to change. That's why I do a video every week, right? But we're just looking and keeping a running record of what this might look like going forward. And the long-range outlook from the CPC, the Climate Prediction Center, for summer isn't dry around us. I mean, it's got something here, but is this telling me that maybe the subtropical ridge is there? I mean, could you see that? That's a possibility, but we have to wait and see. It would appear that this summer has flanking ridges, one here and one here, but I think this one's going to be closer to Bermuda where it normally is, not necessarily closer to Cape Hatteras. So we just need to watch it carefully and know what the models are saying so we have something to compare against. It's a benchmark, all right? Okay, let's get back into it. This is the latest all hazards weather map. So all the actions north on this system, there's a lot of flooding in around where I live. This is all from the system that came through last week. Red flag warnings back out for the harder winter wheat belt, the western side of it here. And there's more winter storm warnings out for California. They're going to be here forever. This is going to be a constant theme. If we look at the current wind field right now, this low that's moving through the northern tier of the United States Monday and Tuesday, we got too much high pressure over us for it to be an influence. But the Pacific is about to get very, very active as we go forward. So let's go ahead and have a look at some of the high-res models. And I can actually play this for you relatively quickly. High pressures and control. Systems stay north, systems stay in the west. And we go through the day on Monday, into the day on Tuesday, maybe on Tuesday or Monday night, Tuesday morning, scattered showers in the Appalachian Mountains. But we're not looking at much in terms of rainfall. I mean, even what's coming through here, very, very limited chances of getting any sort of accumulating precipitation early this week. But after that, things are going to change up a bit. I like to do this model comparison. I know you'd probably like to just sit down and look at it for a while and compare them yourself. But what I want to do here is I'm just looking for where the models agree and where they disagree. So through Tuesday, out into Wednesday, high pressure still around. When does the next system get to us? Well, it's forming here in the Mid-South on Thursday. And that system by Friday tries to push some moisture over us. Now, there's some colder air coming in later this week. And notice that in Virginia, both models right now, at the end of this week, midday Friday, are trying to bring in some snow. But I just don't right now, and I'm recording this late on Sunday night, see that snow getting into North Carolina. But that's when our moisture comes in the first round. That's Friday. Then it clears out for the weekend. Big coastal low maybe develops. And this is where the models begin to diverge. Because the European model leaves a bunch of high pressure in place all the way out to the following Monday. And the European drops in another system through here. Excuse me. The GFS, that's the United States flagship model, drops in another big event. And this could set off a wetter week too. But as it stands, I'm going to give you the European model's forecast. If we see here, not much going on through Wednesday, Thursday. This is the first push of moisture coming through on Friday. And notice it's not heavy rainfall amounts. The heavier rains out back in, Arkansas, Tennessee, the northern parts of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, over to South Carolina. We're not looking right now at a lot of precipitation out of this for late in the week. And then we're going to wait until next Tuesday, Wednesday for maybe the next round to come through. But overall, the next 10 days looks like this. So there's your flooding event in California. This is all snow. Severe storms here likely, or at least strong storms. But we're spending too much time with high pressure, and that's why we see drier conditions. All right. What about week 2? I'm going to give you a broad view. If the jet stream begins to line itself out like this, it'll have components that do like that, which means you notice how we're no longer on the dry side of week 2. And the models here are trying to pull some of this moisture farther to our north. This is the GFS forecast. So I wouldn't settle into thinking week 2 is going to be as dry as like the next 4 to 5 days are going to be. But I do think we're going to see better chances into week 2. What I want to talk about are what these temperatures are going to do. Now I'm going to show you high temperatures, compare them to normal, because Monday into Tuesday is very mild. But as we talked about, remember the first front comes through on Tuesday, so Wednesday's cooler, Thursday's cooler, Friday is cooler. Remember, Friday's the day we're concerned about maybe some snow early in the day here. And then as we get into Saturday, now you start to see the colder air beginning to really set itself up. Now remember, we've talked about this. We expect that colder air to last through the middle part of the month. We may see temperatures on average, 5 to 10 degrees cooler than normal. But the risk of frost as it stands right now is shown in gray. So late this week, we do have the risk of overnight low temperatures dipping down below freezing. We're going to keep a close eye on this map as we press forward. Last thing, I want to give you a bit of an international update. Precipitation first. Okay, let's go to South America. Flooding continues for central Brazil. This is an area that has been extremely wet. There's a late harvest in central Brazil, while Mato Grosso to the north is on time. They're doing fine there. 30% of the crops going in Mato Grosso, the big chunk of it, though, in central Brazil has yet to be harvested. Argentina has a dry week ahead, but there's storms trying to fill back in after the next about 7 days. Europe, wet, and it has been very dry in Germany, France, the Iberian Peninsula, and the British Isles. So to see moisture coming in through here, this is really important moisture right now. Take note that south of the Yangtze River, dry, and then Northern Territory into Queensland, very, very wet on some tropical moisture coming through that area. On the temperature side of this, it's a hot week in Argentina, continuing to reduce the crop quality there. But we expect some storms to be coming through again, but not this week. It's early next week. You see much of Europe is mild, but notice how mild it's going to be through much of Asia. I got to watch this very carefully for what this might mean for setting up this part of the world with potential drought risk later this year, and what it might also do when it comes to the strength of the Indian monsoon. We do compete a lot with Indian crops, especially cotton, just as an example for some of you cotton growers in North and South Carolina. So we'll just watch it, and I'll keep reporting back to you, all right? Appreciate your attention. We'll talk again soon. Thanks.